So I'm sitting in this bar talking to this guy who seems like the kind of guy that would sit all day in a bar talking to weird people like me. And I ask him, where he's from, what his, background is. And he tells me he used to be this pool champion on the West Coast. And I was talking to him in this town in northern England. I don't remember the name, but it was a kind of a seaside town. There's all these cliffs, really dangerous cliffs, but really cool cliffs. And so this guy was telling me that he had won a whole bunch of tournaments, and I didn't really believe him. And so I asked him, I said, if you're such a pool champ, why don't you run the table on me? And so we put 3/4 into the pool table, and he proceeded to run the table on me with the other end of his pool cue, like the little rubber end, not the front end, but the back end. So I guess he really was, despite being some guy that spends his time all day in a bar drinking, he was really good at pool. So as he was explaining to me some more about his background, there was like this parade started going by in the, outside. And I asked him, I said, what's the deal? What's the parade about? And he said it was kind of a once every couple of 3 months thing. Nothing really planned, but they just, whenever the townspeople decided to have a parade, they would have a parade. So I figured, what the hell, I'll go check it out. So I go outside and I see these guys all walking down the street, and they're dressed up like they're going to the circus or something. I mean, they're wearing all these just wild costumes, and it started to look like a funeral procession, because it looked like in the back they were carrying a dead guy. And at first I thought it was just some kind of make-believe type of deal where they just, pretend and they have like a fake body just for fun. But it was a real dead guy. And the thing was, he wasn't even in a coffin. He was just laying there on this slab of wood. And the guy had been dead probably a week. And I don't know if maybe they dug him up or something, or they stole him from the morgue, but they just had this dead guy, and he was part of the parade. And I didn't ask the guy that beat me at pool. He stayed in the bar, so I couldn't really ask him what the heck was going on. So I just kind of followed the parade, and they ended up down in this big flat grassy area on these cliffs, over the ocean. And they got to the end, and I thought they were going to maybe build like a funeral pyre or something, but they just hurled this dude off the cliff, just him and the wooden thing that he was on. And I went over and I looked, and there's all these rocks, and this guy's body didn't even make it to the ocean. He was just kind of broken into a bunch of pieces. Not broken, but like bones were broken and stuff. Kind of laying on these rocks, and the piece of wood was also splintered, and the waves were kind of crashing into the wood, and they were slowly floating out. And I guess the guy would eventually float out into the ocean and maybe wash up somewhere else. And so after they threw this dead guy off the cliff, they set up like this bonfire in the middle of this grass area on the cliff. And pretty soon a lot more people came. The size of the crowd maybe doubled over the next couple hours. And there was a couple of kegs, and it wasn't really organized. It was just, give a donation, you get a cup, and you use your same cup, and you keep drinking. And as it got dark, they built a big, huge bonfire in the middle of this grass area. And people are drinking and getting drunk and getting loud and singing, and pretty soon these fights started breaking out. And when a fight broke out, the crowd would kind of crowd around them in a big ring and create this ring to let them fight. And it blew my mind. These two guys were fighting, and it wasn't like tap out or whatever. They just fought until one guy was knocked unconscious. But once the guy was knocked unconscious, the crowd would start cheering, and they would pick up the unconscious guy and throw him off the cliff. It's like, what the fuck? And that happened like 3 or 4 times. They would just get into these brawls, and it was like these guys were talking and drinking and laughing, and they would start pushing each other and start punching each other, and then pretty soon it was a full-on brawl. And then the guy that got knocked out would just get hurled off the cliff. And I was afraid to even make eye contact with somebody, because I might get into a fight and get my ass kicked, and they'd hurl my unconscious body off the cliff. And so I just kept drinking and tried not to mingle with anybody. And eventually I drank so much that I passed out, and I woke up the next morning, and there was a few other people kind of still passed out from the night before. And so I kind of left quietly, and I went back to the bar, and I had to pay my tab because I never I didn't settle before I left. I just left, and the same guy was working there behind the bar, and I asked him how often these parades happen. He said they just happen, and when they do, we just kind of roll with it. And I just kind of wondered, I mean, they probably killed at least 10 people the night of that parade, and I wondered how they can still have people in this town if they don't, I mean, if they continue to murder them indiscriminately. So I stay away from downtown now, so I don't get sucked up into that nightmare. Jesus Christ.